President Trump's top economic advisor, Gary Cohn, said we can pay for the entire tax cut through growth. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin agreed the plan will pay for itself. Senator John Thune said that even a modest amount of economic growth could cover the cost of this bill. And White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney went so far as to say that he thinks it, quote, actually generates money. Director Hall, does this bill, do the tax cuts pay for themselves in your analysis?
No, our estimate is that they increase the deficit by almost $1.9 trillion over the next 10 years.
So the tax cuts increase the deficit by almost $1.9 trillion over the next 10 years. And do you think that we will be in a position where there's any level of sustained growth that, in your analysis, that would somehow mitigate that? Your analysis accounts for that, obviously, but tell us about the growth assumptions. Maybe that's a better way to state the question.
Well, sure. And really, there are kind of two different growth things going on. The Tax Act in particular made some changes that encourage investment, encourage capital deepening, and we think that that did in fact contribute to potential GDP, which is sort of the supply side view. And we do have an increase in potential GDP throughout the 10-year period, and probably some increase after that. But also at the same time, a lot of the Tax Act and actually the other two bills, the Bipartisan Budget Act and the Consolidated Appropriations Act, provided a lot of stimulus. So you have some increase in potential, but you have a lot of stimulus, and that stimulus is going to push growth above its potential for a while. And while that's good in the short run, the fact that it's above potential is going to cause pressure, going to increase pressure on inflation and interest rates, and we think what's going to happen is the Fed's going to react, raise interest rates faster. Interest rates are going to go up faster. So we're going to then go through a bit of a cycle. After this strong growth from stimulus, that's going to come down, and we're looking for a soft landing to get us back towards potential. So we go through this sort of cycle now.
So for people who are listening who may not be as familiar with the numbers as you are, that means that you estimated, I think it was 3.4, 3.5% for this year. Is that correct?
That's right.
And then you brought it down to a much lower level for the following years. So in other words, it's not generating sustained growth in the economy, and the result of that is this $1.9 trillion deficit. So let me ask you another question sort of related to growth. Did you factor in any effects of a restrictive immigration policy?
No, our assumptions on the level of immigration has been pretty much the same.
So if we were to pass bills that the other side has been pushing that would significantly restrict immigration policy to this country, what would happen to growth?
Well, it depends on what's done exactly, but
let's say we cut legal immigration by 25 million over the next 5 decades, which is the proposal that Chairman Goodlatte has put on the floor.
Well, one of the concerns we would have, one of the possible outcomes would be a lowering of the labor supply. Right, and it's part of what this, our near-term projection is pretty high now, because we have the labor supply increasing pretty significantly, labor force participation going up. That would potentially have the other effect where it would lower the labor supply, and it could restrict our ability to produce. And so
could significantly increase our deficits, because it could significantly decrease our growth. Let me ask you this. If we were, I said last year, as Mr. Boyle did, that the plan here is to first transfer trillions of dollars of wealth to the wealthiest. You don't have to comment on that, through the tax cut. Second, balloon the deficit, which is what's happened, $1.9 trillion deficit, the majority of which is because of this tax cut. And then third, use that as an argument to cut spending on programs that I consider earned benefit programs like Social Security, programs like Medicare. There are other options besides that. What would happen, for example, if we raise the cap on Social Security? And you have just 8 seconds, and I know the chairman's very certain about these things.
It would generate some more income, and revenue would go up. We have an exact estimate. I don't have it in my mind, but we have a document called Options for Reducing the Deficit, and we do go through that scenario.
So there's lots of opportunities to do things that don't involve cutting Social Security, even though that's certainly what sometimes the majority seems to be focused on, is cutting Social Security.